Hi, it's Monday, September 15th, and we have a few systems to watch in the tropics over the next few days. Starting in the eastern Pacific, the first one is Tropical Storm Mario, sitting just south of the Baja California Peninsula. This system formed just off the coast of Mexico over this weekend and briefly died out. It actually opened up into an open trough west of Mexico, but gained a one-up and reformed just south of the Baja California Peninsula, and it's been pretty steady state and intensity over the past day. And the system is now moving into cooler waters, generally towards the northwest, and is not a threat at all to the Baja California Peninsula, and that's reflected here in the Hurricane Center forecast. You can see it dying out by the middle to latter half of this week. Now, behind it, there's also another area of low pressure forming just south of Mexico today. This system will also have a pretty good chance of developing as it tracks west-northwest, and generally staying offshore of Mexico. So no imminent threat to Mexico there with this system, though there may be some reason to watch this in Baja California later down the line. Models are still a little bit uncertain onto exactly what it's going to do when it gets to around where Mario is right now. The consensus is that it will track west out to sea, harmlessly away into cooler waters, but there are still some models showing a potential that this system tries to come a little bit more east, and if that does become a more significant probability, we'll talk about that when we get there. But for now, this is the Hurricane Center outlook. You can see Tropical Storm Mario there, and a medium chance of development of that next low. They've got it at about 60% in the next 7 days. Okay, now talking about the Atlantic side of things, the primary focus of today's video is going to be Invest 92L in the tropical Atlantic. Though one may catch your eye, another system, it's an area of low pressure off the Carolina coast. Just to note this one, this system is not forecast to transition into any subtropical or tropical system. It is still connected to a front that you can see here, outlined by the clouds. And the system is also weakening now, so no subtropical or tropical development is expected there. But as this low sits here over the next day or so, more rainfall can be expected along the mid-Atlantic coast. But the big story in the Atlantic is Invest 92L in the tropical Atlantic, and this is really what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the video, as this wave has been doing very good structure-wise over the past couple of days since it came off the west coast of Africa. Now, comparing this to Invest 91L a couple of weeks ago, we do think that this system is likely to form into a tropical cyclone. But unlike 91L, this system is doing much better than 91L ever did. We have seen over the past weekend that the system has had consistent convection over its center. You can see it's a very broad wave, but we have had a lot of convection sustaining over the center of the storm. And this is important because we've had a lot of dry air in the tropical Atlantic this year. That's what was detrimental to Invest 91L a couple of weeks ago. And you can see that just in advance of this storm with all the stratocumulus clouds here. That's denoting the dry, stable air that's not favorable for thunderstorms. But with all this convection still blowing up here, that's keeping the environment surrounding the low moist and allowing more and more convection to form. And through this gradual process, it's allowing an area of low pressure to form and tighten. And eventually this will lead to a tropical cyclone forming. Right now, the consensus seems to be late week in a Thursday, Friday timeframe last I saw on model guidance. Now, if we look just at the structure of the system as well, aside from convection, we do now see today some weak westerly winds on the south side, showing that the system is indeed making progress with all of this convection. Yesterday was more of an open wave. Now we're seeing a broad area of low pressure form. Now, this broad structure is going to cause a little bit of difficulty for the system going forward. The first one is that larger systems do tend to take more time to consolidate, so the system is not going to be rapidly developing as it comes west-northwest. But also, once it does form, it may cause issues with dry air, as wind shear is not really going to be a big issue going forward. The big issue is going to be dry air, and it's not only the dry air in advance of it in the tropical Atlantic right now, it's also further north. I'll go to the big view of the Atlantic, and you can see here's Invest 92L. And just north of it, we've got an upper trough here, a pair of two upper lows that makes up this big upper trough sitting just north of it. And what's happening is we've got an area of high pressure just west of the Azores that's cutting off this southern part into an upper low, which is going to start backing towards the west. But another segment of this is that there's a lot of dry air that's been deposited into the environment on the backside of this trough. And so as this upper low backs towards the west and 92L comes northwest, it's going to begin to run into all this dry air. And that's going to cause an issue because, as I mentioned, this is a broad system. And when you have a broad system like this, it's pulling in air from a greater area. So it's going to be much easier for 92L to pull in that dry air into its circulation than if it was a smaller system, for example. We can see this happen if we look at the GFS mid-level moisture plot. This is where the storm is now, and you can see this is all the dry air. You can see in the wind barbs, there's also counterclockwise flow. This is an upper low that's cutting off. And so as we go in time, you'll see the wave comes northwest, and immediately you'll see that we do get some dry air entrainment onto this western side. And the question from here on out is, how does the storm react to this dry air, and how effectively can it mix it out, as that will make a huge difference on the long-term track of the system. Now, there also may be some slight moderate shear over the system. It's not really the upper low shearing it, it's more so the upper low being here, stopping the westward progression of the upper high sitting on top of 92L. So because of that, this upper high gets a little bit displaced to the east of the storm, so we get a little bit of southerly flow aloft, and this is a little different to the surface flow of where the system is going towards the northwest. And so the shear vector there is westerly. So that might also try and help the dry air get entrained. But I think the bigger issue here is just the broad circulation pulling it in from a greater surface area. And so, like I mentioned, the question from here on out is, how does the system respond to this dry air? Because beyond this point, this upper low weakens. And you'll see that here on the model, it weakens away. And shear after that point does lighten to a point where it gets more favorable for the northwest. And so by that point, is the system able to effectively mix out the dry air, or does it continue to get plagued by the dry air by that point? That's going to make a huge difference on exactly where the system tracks, because if the system does get stronger, like the GFS shows in this scenario, it's going to tend to gain latitude faster. So you can see on the model that we end up gaining latitude and go east of Bermuda, which is right here, and we stay out to sea pretty much. The only threat beyond that point would be perhaps to the Azores if it takes a specific track towards the south. But if we look at the European model, we have a different scenario taking place where the system does still get that entrainment of dry air, but it's not able to effectively mix it out in time. And so the system just remains weak for a while. And this is out to next weekend. This is Sunday morning, 2 a.m. Sunday local time. And the system is still rather weak. And so Bermuda is here, and now we're just going west. And it's true here as well that if the system is weaker, it's going to tend to go further west. And eventually on some of these model runs, the European does intensify it, and it does recurve. But that would be more of a threat to Bermuda. And it's uncertain at this point of if that would be any risk to islands further west. If it does, there is still a lot to work out because this is getting to day 6 and day 7 in this forecast. And so you can see this spread as well. If we look at the GFS ensemble, the general idea is that if it's stronger, it comes north, weaker, it goes west. And this is just something we're going to have to watch in real time as it happens over the next few days. The hope would be that we can get the system stronger, as that would mean that we would likely avoid all land areas further west. But if we are weaker and that dry air does plague it a little bit more, then we may have to watch this for the Caribbean islands, Bermuda, and anywhere further west is a little bit uncertain to say for now, but we'll need to keep an eye on it, just monitor its progress over the next couple of weeks. Now, for now, this is current Hurricane Center outlook. You can see an 80% chance of the system developing over the next few days in that general track towards the west-northwest. And again, we'll have to see exactly how it does in this part of the Atlantic with all the dry air. But hopefully we can get it to avoid all the land areas further west. But especially here, Bermuda needs to be watching the system as it comes further northwest, as this is the primary spot where we may see some impacts from the system going forward. Any impacts further west, that's just going to take time to figure out. The general pattern would tend to support the system recovering out to sea, even if it gets further west. But this is a long-term forecast, so we'll have to see exactly how things turn out in that forecast. So still a lot of time to watch this. But apart from this, we're not really watching any other system right now. There will be some other tropical waves that come off of Africa, and those may have to be watched, but we'll talk about those when we have to later down the line. That's all that I've got for today with all these systems. I'll talk about Probably 92L the most this next week. We may talk about the system in the Eastern Pacific more if the threat to land does increase with this system. But otherwise, Tropical Storm Mario is going northwest. And apart from that, the tropics worldwide are still rather quiet for this abnormally quiet peak season. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.